never have bought.
Right.
I would never have been a Pikmin fan if there was no Pikmin 3 demo on the Wii U. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, it's a very good way to get new people to play it, and just see if you like it. And maybe if you buy the game, and say if you bought it, there's no demo, and you just don't like it, then you're going to be kind of angry about wasting that money, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it can only bring good things to have demos. So.
All right, so we can move on to the questions, but if you guys have enough time, we can do a quick discussion on the our favorite Zelda theories.
Sure.
All right. I
think people like that.
Do you have a little bit more time before we get to the?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm just chilling.
All right. Also, for the Q&A, I started streaming on YouTube, so maybe we can get a couple of questions from the people watching. So for everybody watching, it is myself, Daniel, who you always see on the podcast, and Holly Wolf, who has been in several videos. You can't see them, but you can see me. You should be able to hear them, though. We will be taking questions later on for the podcast, but for now, we need to get through our final topic of discussion. So, guys, Daniel and I had our worst Zelda theories video, which was a question sent in by a viewer, and it did so well. Nobody asked what our favorite Zelda theories were. Some of the worst ones was Link being dead in Majora's Mask, that theory. The theory that Wind Waker takes place, or Breath of the Wild takes place before Wind Waker, or Breath of the Wild takes place before Skyward Sword. Those are some of our worst. So this time we're going to be talking about some of our favorites. Starting with you this time, Holly. We went with Daniel last time. What are your favorite Zelda theories?
I watched a lot of videos about there being a fourth piece in the Triforce. I like that theory.
Oh yeah, there's the
Tetraforce.
Yeah, there's
it's called, right?
The Fierce Deity costume has the down-facing Triforce symbol.
Exactly, yeah, and that there is a fourth piece, and I think it went into like a lot of things within Majora's Mask also being like involved. Yeah.
And also the Hylian shield in Ocarina of Time. It was removed in later designs of the shield, but in Ocarina of Time it has that fourth piece upside down at the bottom of the shields. But in Twilight Princess and onwards it was taken out. I think, I don't know why, but so there is there at least is a little bit more to this theory. Yeah
Princess Zelda in Wind Waker, her name's Tetra.
Yes.
4 giants in Majora's Mask and stuff like that.
All right,
I like that theory.
Okay, here's a question though. So we have the Triforce of Courage, Power, and Wisdom.
Yes.
What would the fourth be? What would that piece be? The Triforce of what?
Power, Wisdom, Courage. I don't know what would
I don't know either. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like if they
I haven't thought of it either.
Wait, I will Google. Power, Wisdom, Courage,
if you Google it, this
and
darkness.
Power, Wisdom, Courage, and
darkness.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, one says virtue.
Nihilism.
One says masculinity, but that would go with power.
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
That's power.
It's got to be the Triforce of Nihilism.
Yeah. Well, if we did put it with Fierce Deity Link, then like what? The Triforce of Fierceness, like there's
fierceness.
So fierce. Courage, wisdom, great fairy, kindness.
Maybe like peace.
Something, like something, more like.
Because I would say like courage and wisdom would go together more so than power and the rest of them. So like if you got courage, because if you have power, you don't need courage, because like the whole point of courage is you're afraid because you think that you can't overcome the obstacle, but then you do it anyways. So I would say, yeah, like something, whatever the opposite of power would be, like something to counteract that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
True.
Yeah. But see, I always saw the Triforce as sort of like this thing that it like sort of represents your, balance as a whole person.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would get pretty deep if we got into this, so we'll just move on. But
yeah, it's a pretty deep one. Well, deep.
All right. What about you, Daniel? What is your favorite Zelda theory?
Well, I've talked about it a lot, but my favorite Zelda theory right now is it's kind of my own theory, or at least I'm actually not the one that came up with this theory, but I think that I made a damn good video about it back in the day.
Really quick,
which is the
Phantom Wolf in the chat said maybe courage, power, wisdom, and love.
Oh, love.
Yeah.
Love. I mean, yeah, because love has a lot, like.
What's love got to do?
It's got a lot of things involved with love, right? Like compassion and I guess peace as well. But like, I don't know, but love would kind of make sense. True.
I wonder if anyone in the chat has guessed what theory I'm gonna say here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you, we talked about this a little bit earlier on the other discussion topic, but that's how I became friends with you, was because of your theory on what's called a dragon break, where the different timelines all converge together.
Yes, my dragon break theory. No, I actually love this theory. It's where the 3 timeline splits all merge together. Presumably that merge would happen 10,000 years before Breath of the Wild. That's kind of the gist of the theory.
Oh, right.
So that's why all of these things that kind of contradict each other, like there is stuff that kind of points towards adult timeline, but stuff that also points towards child timeline, and stuff that points towards downfall timeline. I'm pretty sure developer-wise, like, it's all throwbacks and Easter eggs and stuff, but like, as far as trying to make a canon timeline placement goes, it kind of lends itself to all spots in the timeline and things that contradict each other. So this idea of a dragon break is actually a time paradox that the term dragon break itself comes from the Elder Scrolls series, and the basis behind it is in Elder Scrolls it's so open-ended, those games, and there are games when they were making the second one, Daggerfall, there were like 12 different endings to the game or something like that. I think it was 8 different endings. So when they're making the third Elder Scrolls game, Morrowind, they're like, well, how do we choose like the canon ending for Daggerfall to make a sequel? Like, how do we account for all of this different stuff happening? So they had the idea of a dragon break in which a time paradox happened. No one is really sure what happened, but it seems like all of it happened, even though those things sort of contradict each other. So it's this weird time paradox that causes all of the 8 endings, I think, that happened to all occur and cause a really messed up history to happen. So I think the same thing, only on a smaller scale, because there's only 3 timelines, not 8, happened with Zelda, when basically because the Hero of Time in Ocarina of Time, where the timeline split occurs, there's so much time travel and stuff that when that split occurred, it caused that time paradox.
Yeah. And
to support this theory, the dragon break 100% does happen in Majora's Mask. The ending of Majora's Mask is a dragon break, because for all 4 giants to have been able to show up means that Link would have to beat all 4 dungeons in a single 3-day cycle. And during the credits, it shows you all the side quests that you completed and the resolution for those. And for all of those endings to have occurred, you would have to do all those side quests in a single 3-day cycle. And contrary to what some people have told me, it is actually impossible to do everything in one 3-day cycle, because you would need to be at Romani's Ranch at the same time as being in Clocktown to stop one event from happening, and then you need to be able to buy the bomb bag. And you need to be able to complete the Andean Cafe side quest twice somehow, right? So like there's too many things that happen at the same time. It's impossible. You can't.
Yeah.
But when you beat the game, all of that stuff happened. It's shown. It's in the credits. It's in the ending cutscene. Happy Mask Salesman. And you made a lot of people happy. That's great. And so it did. That's the dragon break. It happened in Majora's Mask. So there's my evidence.
And the bank,
it's not a...
the bank keeps your money when you go back in time.
The bank keeps your money.
Yeah.
Even though you keep time traveling. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when I made that video, they're like, no, that's only in Elder Scrolls, that's not in Zelda. But in that video, I explain how it happens in Majora's Mask, and it also happens in Skyward Sword, so it's not a new concept for Zelda at all.
Yeah. All right.
That's my favorite.
My favorite.
I'm a wiener.
My favorite Zelda theory. Also Kirby Aaron says, Daniel, will you be my friend?
Oh.
Yes,
and then,
I will. Message me on Discord.
You were talking about the Elder Scrolls, and then someone said, whose name was the champion of Morrowind, says possible candidates for the fourth Triforce: Impa, Epona, Tingle, or Beetle. They all exist in multiple games in multiple timelines, so they are the only other characters that would appear in all of the different timelines. So that's Tingle gets his own Triforce piece confirmed.
Oh no, no.
Yes.
No.
So
No.
yeah, and then the legendary swordsman says, did you guys hear about the Tetraforce? That is what we're talking about. That's Holly's.
Yeah, Tetraforce, yeah.
That's Holly's favorite Zelda theory. Mine, I don't know I want to make a full video about it, but I really like the theory that we came up with, or I guess I came up with. We discussed it on one of the previous mailbags about the true purpose of the Forest Temple. Do you remember that one, Daniel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about that 2 weeks ago, or was it last week?
This was like 2-3 weeks ago.
2 weeks, 3, yeah. No, it was honestly, it was like, you totally just thought it up on the spot, and it was like,
yeah,
here's a theory, and it was like flawless.
Yeah. Did you watch that video, Holly?
I don't think I did.
Right,
no, I've
so,
been kind of catching up, but I don't think I've fully caught up. Sorry.
So it's basically, there's going to be 29 people listen to me go on about nonsense. So the theory was basically, because we were talking about the worst Zelda theories, and then while we were talking, I ended up thinking of my own theory, and it was Link gets brought to Kokiri Forest as a kid, and then like Ganondorf comes to Kokiri Forest later on, tries to get the spiritual stone of the forest, or the forest medallion, whatever it's called, from the Deku tree. He can't get it, so he poisons him, and then he leaves. And it sets in the events that happen in Ocarina of Time. And whenever you complete the first dungeon, the Deku tree, you kill Queen Goma, however it's pronounced, he gives you the spiritual stone. But it does, like, you don't get it from a chest or something inside of him. You get it from, like, it just falls from the air. Like, he just summons it up. So my theory was, because later on we are introduced to the Forest Temple. Yeah. But we aren't told exactly what the purpose of it is. It's just like this giant mansion that has a bunch of dungeons and stuff inside it in the middle of the forest. A forest that no one can get through, otherwise they'll turn into the Stalfos or whatever. Yes. So Ganondorf couldn't go to the Forest Temple to get the spiritual stone himself, because at this time he didn't possess the power of the Triforce or whatever to take over the world. So if he would have went into the Lost Woods for too long, then he would have turned into a Stalfos, and there would have been no point in completing the game, because Ganondorf's basically dead already. So my thought was that the entire purpose of this big mansion was like a safeguard, not just for the Kokiri to possibly live in, or the Koroks, but for the spiritual stone to be guarded and protected. Because then, if someone does manage to get through the Kokiri Forest, or not the Kokiri Forest, the Lost Woods, then they still have this giant mansion full of puzzles, dungeons, traps, and everything to get through in order to get it. And that's why Ganondorf couldn't just get it himself. Like, he poisoned, basically killed, tortured the Deku tree, but he couldn't physically Like, even though he did that, he still couldn't physically get the spiritual stone from him, and that's why. And then the reason that Phantom Ganon is the boss of the Forest Temple later on is because when Ganondorf does get the power, or the power of the Triforce, when he freezes Zora's domain, dries out Lake Hylia, does all this stuff, one of the things that he does is he curses the forest. He puts his own enemies in the forest, the guardians or whatever they are, that are like you have to run past. What are
those
like
big guys.
the moblins?
Oh, those are the moblins. Yeah.
Yeah. So the moblins are there in the forest, and like they have the giant bats or the spears, and they chase after you. But later on, they're replaced by the Deku Scrubs. So, the Deku Scrubs or whatever try to hit you as an adult, and
no, other way around. As a child.
Yeah, as a child, they're just
it's the Deku Scrubs on your child Link, and then Ganondorf.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The moblins.
Had it mixed up. So sorry.
But you were on the right track though. Don't worry.
Yeah. So the point is, he puts like the more fierce enemies there.
Yeah.
You have like giant Deku Babas and Deku Scrubs all over Kokiri Forest, where there was previously no enemies at all, and then inside the Forest Temple, where he physically couldn't get to before, there's now like the evil demonic ghost version of himself. So my thought was, like, developer wise, they were probably just like, oh, this would be cool if we had like a Phantom Ganon fight here, like to prepare you for the real fight. But in story, I was thinking, what if, because that was the one place that Ganondorf couldn't get to, as kind of payback, he was like, well, I'll just put like the ghost of myself or whatever there to haunt the place, since I couldn't get there before. So that was my theory, that like basically his way of like, you wouldn't let me have it before, so now I'm going to haunt it.
Yeah,
basically. So that's
cool.
that was the theory that I came up with, and then like I came up with it on the spot whenever Daniel and I were talking. So it was I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I guess those are our 3 favorite Zelda theories. Holly had the Tetraforce, Daniel had the Dragon Break timeline convergence, and mine was the Forest Temple, which is the end of all 3 of our discussions or our topics. So we finally get to our mailbag and some awesome news. This mailbag was inspired by the mailbag that used to be on Zelda Dungeons YouTube channel, and the host of it left, and their mailbag kind of went away for a few years, but now they brought it back with the original host. So if you guys are fans of getting your questions answered, please go there. But if you would like us to answer your questions on this mailbag, on this podcast, please put your questions in the comments below. Some of you who are watching it live, we will try to get to your questions as well. And if you want to guarantee your question to be read and answered and be featured on the podcast, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can pledge at any amount to have your question guaranteed to be featured. So our first question, well, first off, because we have a new guest here for the mailbag, Holly, go ahead and introduce yourself for some of the people.
Oh yes, hello guys, my name is Holly Wolf. I am a model and cosplayer, and I love Zelda.
All right, and we have, and because of these questions, for the people who are like, oh, she's just a fake gamer girl, these questions that she's going to be answering will prove you wrong. So, yes. And then, of course, as always, we have Daniel. So,
I am here too.
Yes.
We have a lot of questions from Discord as well, including one of our patrons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll get to her question next. I assume it's a girl, because we don't have many guy Patreons. I think it's all the girls. They just love your beautiful face, Daniel. That's why.
Mine?
Yeah, that's why it's
My
like
beautiful face?
That's why we
coming
have.
From you, Mr. Glorious Beard?
Nah,
Mr.
it's not.
Mr. Handsome?
All right.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Calm down. Settle down.
I mean, I do have razor sharp cheekbones, though. So.
Yes.
There
There was a couple of people who was like, "Who's this Keanu Reeves look-alike?"
Ooh.
Yeah.
I do have emotions, okay?
All right. So
actually, most people say I look like Andy Samberg.
Oh.
I think it's the teeth. It's my gap.
All right. Queue up.
No, I know how to kill a room.
get the question from the Patreon ready, and we'll get to it after this one. But the first question, a very simple one, comes from the champion of Morrowind, which actually is in the chat right now. So he's getting his question answered that he left on the last video. What is your least favorite Zelda game? Not saying any of them are bad. Starting with you, Holly. What Zelda game do you just hate? Or at least your least favorite?
I don't know. That's changed over time, obviously, because I didn't like Wind Waker when it first came out until I played it, and then it changed my mind on it, obviously. Can I say Link's crossbow training?
Does that count? That doesn't count, Holly.
No, it is. Unlike the...
It's canon, guys.
No, unlike...
There's no reason for it to not be canon, but it's Zelda in the title.
Unlike the CDI games. So, unlike the CDI games, Link's crossbow training was actually made by Nintendo.
Yes.
So...
Okay, ground rules. No CDI game, and no spin-offs, because, like, I like Hyrule Warriors, but I wouldn't count it as a Zelda game, right?
We'll let you. We'll come back to you on your least favorite, Holly. So you can think. I am going to say Phantom Hourglass. Now, Phantom Hourglass, I would say is like a 6 out of 10. I would say it's better than a lot of other games, but for the Zelda series, it's the one that I least like to play. And there was a sign, like one of the signs you can come up to and read, not like Jesus knocking on your door kind of sign, but
it wasn't a sign from God.
yes, it was a sign from God that the game was just horrible. No, there was a sign in the game that you could read, or a message that you could come across that kind of poked fun at itself. That was like, who thought an all motion control Zelda game was a good idea or something, or like, why doesn't this have traditional buttons? And it was kind of like breaking the fourth wall, kind of poking fun at itself, because Phantom Hourglass, you attack, you walk, you do everything with the touchscreen. Like, you can't use the buttons to run around and move. So I thought it would have been the perfect candidate for a Wii U remake, because you still had the two screens. You could use the touchscreen to move like you could in the original game, or if they added traditional controls, then you could still have the same gameplay, or, you know, not change too much of it, because you still have the touchscreen that you can use for some of the puzzles, but you bringing it with traditional controls would have been great. But the way that they had it originally wasn't that great. Spirit Tracks, same gameplay style, all touchscreen, but I thought it was a little bit better than Phantom Hourglass. So that's mine. What is yours, Daniel?
You know, I was going to say almost the same thing. I was going to say Phantom Hourglass, and the Spirit Tracks is so much better. I wouldn't say a little bit better. I would say they took everything that was like any feedback from Phantom Hourglass, and they just took it to the next level. Spirit Tracks is above and beyond way better than Phantom Hourglass. A lot of people disagree with me on that. I don't care. it's so much better. They took like the whole Temple of the Ocean King thing, where you have to play through the same dungeon over and over again.
Oh yeah.
And sneaking around it, and they actually made that fun. and that you don't have to go through all the same floors over again in that Tower of what's it, Tower of Spirits?
Yeah.
The big tower.
I think so.
And yeah, and then the train controls are way better than the boat lineback ship controls. Way better. Having the puzzles where you have Zelda with her Phantom are way better than
the way they used
was elevated. Just
the way they used the
even
train
the aesthetics
was a puzzle in itself, because you would have to
honestly,
pick
driving it so much easier.
Yeah, like you would have to pick where, like when to take which route or route on the train tracks, because the ghost trains, I think that's what they were called, the demon trains, whatever they were, like they would be coming at you, so you'd have to pick which one to go to, and then like sometimes there would be little mini games pop up that you could do while on it. So like it wasn't just get on the train, go to point A from point B. Like there was gameplay there. Unlike Wind Waker or Phantom Hourglass, where you could just set it down while you're on your way.
Yeah, and like you could, like go for Sunken Treasure and stuff in both Phantom Hourglass and Wind Waker. But I mean, I found unless you were like really super dexterous and able to draw perfectly straight lines, the boat controls in Phantom Hourglass were really janky. And because you were stuck on the train tracks, it was so much smoother to control the train. And like you said, it's almost sort of a little mini game or puzzle in itself when you're driving the train. So I replayed Spirit Tracks a number of times. I've played Phantom Hourglass twice ever. Which is really low for a Zelda game for me. And Spirit Tracks I've played probably 6 times. And every other Zelda game I can think of, like honestly, I would say I would rate above Phantom Hourglass, like by quite a bit. And then all of this is not to say that I dislike Phantom Hourglass. I actually still do enjoy that game. But when I'm like, I want to play Zelda, that is definitely not my go-to. I'm not. This just doesn't even. I don't even think about it most of the time. Minish Cap was really good. Like I played Minish Cap through once because I only played it for the first time last year or 2 years ago, and I would sooner go back to that than Phantom Hourglass. Same. I haven't played the Oracle games, so I didn't even consider them for this list.
Yeah, I haven't played those either.
Yeah, those are the only Zelda games I haven't played is the Oracle games, and I haven't finished playing Link's Awakening, as I said earlier, but yeah. So Jesse, I 100% agree with you, except that I think more highly of Spirit Tracks, I guess.
All right. What about you?
I think
Holly?
I bought you enough time there, Holly.
No, actually, you guys totally. I actually forgot about those 2 games even existed.
Well,
I was trying to think about them. I didn't even.
In comparison to the other Zelda games, they are kind of forgettable.
They're weak.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. Better than a lot of other DS games that were out.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
I didn't even remember they existed when you asked me about my. Yeah, I'm sorry, but like when I think of Zelda, exactly, I think of Ocarina of Time. I think of Majora's Mask, Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess. All like that's what I think of. A Link Between Worlds and like Link's Awakening. Because I literally forgot those games existed. So I would say both of them. I would say both, because I don't know, when I played them I was a bit younger too, and they didn't stick with me like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time did. So like
I would say that like it's always good to go back and play them again, because you can kind of see the faults and the highlights. But like
you forget a lot.
Playing through Phantom Hourglass, like the second time I played through it, I was like, okay, I'll play them like back to back. And the whole time I was playing through Phantom Hourglass, I was like, I can't wait to finish this so I can play Spirit Tracks, because it's so much better.
Okay.
Yeah, like I felt like I was like doing a chore almost, like before I could get to the fun game, you know? It just, yeah. Someone watching this is gonna be upset with me.
Right.
Well, they'll be upset with me too, because I just don't even write them as. I'm like,
but like
what?
soundtrack, even the soundtrack is like tenfolds better in Spirit Tracks.
Yeah, but soundtracks in Majora's Mask are just better than all of that.
Yes, Yeah, actually, I really like Majora's Mask soundtracks as well.
Yeah, it's my go-to for whenever I feel like listening to Zelda music. So.
Yeah.
And if you're ever in like a really weird, like melancholic mood, just like get some good headphones and listen to Great Bay Temple, and you'll feel like like you're in a weird state, like you're in another world.
So good.
Oh. Jesse's probably shaking his head right now.
No.
Like, we have to move on, guys.
Yeah, let's move on. What's the next?
Daniel, you're supposed to be getting the question from Patreon lady.
Oh no, I was talking about Zelda too much.
Yeah, which
actually, this comes from Ravalli's Booze.
Oh, okay.
Ashley.
Okay, so
what
are your thoughts on?
A huge shout out.
Hold on. What are your thoughts on Ravalli? Holly.
Ravalli's kind of a prick.
Well, yeah, he's not the most likable character, but I actually really like him.
All right, so there's a sort of an inside joke on the Discord with Ashley, who changed her name to Ravalli's Boo, because in one of the podcasts someone asked, what is your favorite or least favorite champions? Right. Mine was Ravalli. I think maybe Daniel's was as well, and I actually made the statement, who likes Ravalli? Like, out of all of the others, who would like Ravalli the most? And a lot of people were commenting that, like, Zelda Master's favorite's Ravalli, or like,
oh no.
And then they were saying,
Luke, come on, man.
Yeah.
The Rook is the best champion. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. Which I think we talked about the champions when he was on, and he never mentioned Ravalli, so.
No.
Maybe he mentioned it in one of his...
I also really like Urbosa. Everyone's all about Mifa, but Urbosa's a badass.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So, Ashley, and the thing, she either seen the video or we started talking about it later, and people were, like, talking about how I said that who would like Ravalli, and she said her favorite was Ravalli, so she changed her name on Discord to Ravalli's Boo.
That's cute.
Yeah. So, your thoughts on Ravalli? Really quick.
No, I like him. He's not my favorite out of the 4 champions, but I really like his theme song.
Yeah.
Really, out of the 4, I really like his. I don't know, man. He's just got a little bit of an attitude, but I don't think he's a terrible, character or a terrible person in general. I just think, he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and it shows, obviously. I don't know, maybe his parents were too hard on him as a kid, and they're like, you suck at archery or something, It's like, well, now I gotta be the best archer ever, because my parents were so mean to me or something.
All right.
And I think you're onto something with that, because in Champion's Ballad, the Ravalli song memory, you see him, like, training really hard and pushing himself, and you see this moment of vulnerability in him, and it's like a very humanizing moment for this character that otherwise has just been a jerk the whole time, and he just has that moment where he's like, I gotta train harder, I can do this, until Zelda shows up and he realizes he's being watched, that she's there, and then suddenly he's cocky again and a jerk again, right? So
he's putting on a front, clearly. So I like that scene. It was really good. So.
Yeah. It was a very, like I said, very humanizing moment, even though he's not actually a human character, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no other word for that.
Alright, so what was Ashley's, Ravalli's
question?
Okay, so Ashley actually has 2 questions that she left in Discord.
Well,
so the first one is... Oh, sorry? What you say?
I was going to say, like, we usually don't take 2 from the same person, but since she is a Patreon member, we will take her question. She's actually in the chat right now.
She's got the dough. She's got the privilege.
if you go to the YouTube live stream, she's in the chat.
Cute.
Kind of trolling. So.
Oh, good. Keep it up.
Yeah.
So her first question is, and I think I know the answer from all of us on this one. But the question is, have you located all the Korok seeds?
No.
And actually, someone else posted a meme under that says, collect all the Korok seeds, ain't nobody got time for that.
Right? Excuse me, I've done all the shrines, there's no way in hell collecting all the Korok seeds. Sorry.
I set out to. I did all the shrines as well. I got about 600 Korok seeds, and then I was
not
like...
even close.
And I'm like, I can't keep doing this, man! I was going nuts. So I figured as long as I had enough to completely upgrade my inventory, that was okay to Like, and it kind of did irk me because I'm a total completionist, especially when it comes to Zelda. But I do give myself a little bit of slack. Like, I never finished the fishing journals in Twilight Princess, for example.
Oh, okay.
There's just some things that I gotta let slide as like, okay, I'm not gonna count this towards my completion.
And I feel like as soon as like we found out what the reward was,
then it was like
people were kind of like,
spoiler alert, but it's poop, guys.
It's a gold poop emoji. So yeah, I think people were just kind of like, okay. So
okay, we don't need to do this.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what was her second question? Also, someone. I don't think you were here during that stream, but do you remember the last live stream that you joined, Holly, where someone kept on calling us thoughts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's back in the chat again.
No.
They're saying
game
over thought. Game over thought. So.
Yes.
Thanks for the compliment, guys.
That was during the Game Awards. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. All right. What was her second question?
Ashley's second question is, and this is actually a really good question, Ashley. Why do you think they finally decided to bring in the Sheikah? All they have ever had was Impa before, and now they have a town full of them, and the whole game is practically about the Sheikah. Why do you think they focus so much on the Sheikah tribe this time around?
Can we call up Andy from McIntyre?
Oh yeah, he's knowledgeable on the subject.
Yeah, if there was ever a Sheikah historian, it would be Andy.
Oh yeah.
So.
But I can try.
Well, I just think that because they were so clouded in mystery a lot of the other games, you really didn't get to really know much. That it was a good thing to explore, first of all, because there's nothing really concrete about them. So it was easy to make a storyline involving them, right? There's nothing that would contradict much or anything like that. So I mean, that's probably like a good reason. It's just like, all right, well, it's time we finally kind of delve into these guys. So yeah,
a bit of headcanon here, but like I think the Sheikah, like we know that they've existed, but I think they have been present all along.
Yeah.
Like I said, a bit of headcanon in here, very theoretical, but like the Sheikah technology, they were very technologically advanced. We see that in Breath of the Wild with the shrines and the guardians and the Sheikah Slate and the runes and stuff. We go all the way back to Skyward Sword. So we've got the ancient robots, and the time shift stones have the Sheikah symbol on them. And the way that it's all powered with this same sort of design and this blue energy.
Yeah.
And the ancient robots existed in a time before Hyrule, where the goddess Hylia was around, right? The Sheikah were servants to the goddess Hylia. When Hylia was reborn as Zelda, the Sheikah then went on to serve the royal families, like ninja guards, basically,
ninja
right?
Guards, yep.
So this Sheikah technology is super ancient in Breath of the Wild already. I think it's the same technology. And we even see inklings of it. I think there's a relation to the Twilight tribe in Twilight Princess, because their technology has a similar aesthetic. And in Wind Waker, we see glimpses of it in the Tower of the Gods, a similar technology. Now, if the Sheikah were servants to the goddess, there's no reason that like they couldn't have served the other gods as well. So there's sort of a connection there. You see a similar technology. Same with in Twilight Princess in the Temple of Time, as well as the Twilight race, or the Twilight tribe. In the Temple of Time dungeon, there's the statues that get powered up with a similar energy that, you know, has these lines, like all this energy that's... So it's not identical, but I think there's inklings of these Sheikah sort of being behind the scenes all throughout the history of Hyrule. So it's just some food for thought, like, and I think it's only in Breath of the Wild where we've finally seen them, like, a lot, but they've been there, like, all along, like, sort of in secret, you know, doing their ninja stuff, so.
Doing their ninja stuff. And that whole area in Skyward Sword with, the robots, and you see the past, and then the present and stuff, that was so cool to that game.
Yeah, that was one of the really cool gimmicks in that game. Like, it was just, like, such a neat mechanic as well. Yeah. Jesse, your thoughts?
Any thoughts?
Jesse. My thought is like, so in Ocarina of Time 3D,
yeah,
they added a bunch of stuff that wasn't there previously. Some of it was like throwbacks or Easter eggs for Skyward Sword. Like they literally had posters of Skyward Sword in Ocarina of Time 3D. But one of the things that they added was the Book of Medora. There was the Sheikah house in Kakariko Village, and if you go inside the house, on the table there's the big green book, which is the book from, like, it has the Sheikah symbol, and it's the same book, or thought to be the same book from A Link to the Past when you go to Kakariko Village.
And it's also on Zelda's desk in Breath of the Wild, next to her diary.
Is it?
It is, yeah. Because I actually had to go. I'm working on a video for the Chamber of Sages channel, and I had to go record some footage. And I just was going to record footage in there, and I was like, "Whoa, there's that book!" I just saw it. I was like, "Whoa, damn!" So, yeah, it's in Zelda's room. It's pretty cool. It's some nice detail. So pretty much like any green book in Zelda can pretty much much be chalked up to be the Book of Medora.
Yeah, but this book had the Sheikah symbol on it, which it doesn't really say whose house it is. Like they say it belonged to a Sheikah member or whatever. Some theorized that it was a long time ago. Bongo Bongo was like beheaded or whatever. That's why he doesn't have a neck and his hands are cut off.
Wait,
so, like,
which house in Ocarina of Time is it? Which house in Kakariko? Because Bongo Bongo's house was where
the well is.
Theoretically, was where the well is now.
Okay.
I think it's mentioned by the old guy. He's like the guy who used to have the Lens of Truth. His house stands where the well is now, and then you find the Lens of Truth.
Yeah, we have about 50 people watching us talk about the stupidest things.
About a book that's on a table in a house.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, I gotta change my camera battery really quickly.
Uh-oh. See, I just plugged my camera right into the wall. It's like, I ain't taking no risk.
Yeah, whatever. I'm doing that like right now. It's taking a while.
Okay.
Whoa.
So,
do you know which house? Because it might be, do you think it's Impa's house? Because her house is in the game, though you never see her in
it could be Impa's house, but because I was thinking that, and then I was like, well, the other guy was said to be a Sheikah. Bongo Bongo was said to be a member of the Sheikah tribe or whatever. That's why, whatever. But, it could
you wonder, would he have been, like, an early sort of progenitor of the Yiga clan, then, if he was, like, a Sheikah defector?
Yeah, and then, like, we have so many different... There's just so many different things that could point to Sheikah being there. There's always at least one, like Impa is in a bunch of games. Zelda, when she turns into Sheik, obviously becomes a Sheikah member. Even though like her job would be to protect herself, because the Sheikah's job is to their role is to protect the Hylians, but or not the Hylian, the royal family, and she is the royal family, so she's like protecting herself. So but yeah, like they could have always be there. They're secretive or whatever, so they could just be hiding. Who knows? That's one of those. But the original question, why did they wait until Breath of the Wild to focus on it? And I think it's easy to answer, because if you need a plot for a Zelda story and you think back to, okay, what's the easiest mystery that we could kind of dive into? The Sheikah. So they just went with it. Like, that would be at the top of the list, other than like we could do the origins of the Sheikah, which is kind of what they did, or they could do the origins of Majora, and obviously go with Sheikah because they're more known in all of the games. Where so that's my thoughts on it. Do we have the next question? And are you recording again, Holly?
I'm good. It was like not even a 10-second switch.
Right. So we should be able to get through. We'll try to get through the rest of these questions kind of fast. Daniel and I usually do this to where, like, we go in thinking we're just going to spend like 30 seconds to a minute on each question, and then we
that it's always longer.
Yeah,
always.
All right. So our Third question. This one really simple. Comes from Patrick Beard 3. No, just Patrick Beard. They had a 3 beside their name, but it was for something else. Says, has Link ever married Zelda? Now, this comes off one of the main questions from our last video was, are we in favor of the Z-Link, which is what they, like the nickname they give to the Zelda-Link relationship, which Skyward Sword and maybe Breath of the Wild are the only ones that kind of teased it.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on the Link-Zelda relationship? And to answer the question, no, they've never been married that we know of.
At least we've never seen it canonically, but
yeah, when the game ends, who knows?
I think that
they probably
Skyward Sword, Link and Zelda and Skyward Sword, I think that they probably ended up together, but that's the only one that I would be like firmly able to be like, yeah, for sure this one. Yeah. These guys. Maybe Breath of the Wild as well, but otherwise, I always just saw them very platonically.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Next question comes from Nicholas. It says, if you're still taking question, or if you're, blah, I'm getting tongue-tied. Nicholas asks, if you're still taking questions, what do you think about a true Zelda RPG done like Dragon Quest or Fire Emblem?
Like with their combat system?
I would say so, because if they're going like the true RPG route, then it would be more like a turn-based fighting game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he had in mind. They're like, because Fire Emblem's kind of tactical turn-based, Dragon Quest is just like turn-based RPG.
Yeah.
The closest we've got to like really heavy RPG stuff is like Zelda 2, but even then it's like real-time combat still. I think if they took out real-time combat from Zelda, you would lose a pretty big piece of what is important to the series, you know?
Yeah, that's
like, I mean, they're all about kind of doing these convention-breaking stuff lately, but
true. But I wouldn't like that. I don't think I'd be like extremely happy about that.
Yeah, I would.
Unless it was a spin-off and it didn't have Link, like it was a side story about other characters in the Zelda universe.
Oh, Tingle.
That could be really cool. Not Tingle.
We already have 3 or 4 games dedicated to Tingle.
Tingle has its own games already. So, but yeah, like that could be really cool. Especially if you had like the champions or something similar to that.
That'd be cute. That'd be fun.
As your RPG party. You know, you've got Mipha as your healer, Daruk's like your heavy character, you know, Ravalli's your archer, Urbosa's like your fighter. You know, you've got a solid party there.
Actually they're your typical classes.
Yeah, you've got a solid RPG party there.
Maybe
they could make something really good with that.
Maybe you just gave Nintendo an idea for their eventual smartphone Zelda game.
Oh no! I didn't want them to make a smartphone Zelda.
Did you imagine? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Alright,
if they do that, I'm suing.
I don't.
No, I'm kidding.
I don't know if I would like if it's just one game and it's a spin-off, like a third party's making it, not Nintendo themselves, then I could see me playing it and possibly liking it, as long as it's not taking away from whatever the next big Zelda game is. But if they just added more RPG elements, like leveling up weapons or items and stuff like that, sort of like what they did with Breath of the Wild, it had a lot of RPG features. I would like to see even more RPG mechanics put in place, but not the battle system. That's one thing that has to stay Zelda.
I agree.
Alright, so our next question comes from Haley Leonard. See, I'll tell you, like, most of these people are just girls that are in love with you, Daniel.
Oh, man.
Sorry, that girls are great.
Yeah, it says...
I'm off the market, sorry.
Doesn't matter.
It said, Game Over Jesse, I have something that may be a good discussion. Would Nintendo include DLC for other games like Mario, Xenoblade, Pokemon, or any other titles? Now, we've seen DLC for Smash Brothers, Hyrule Warriors, Mario Kart, Breath of the Wild, Fire Emblem Warriors, the Fire Emblem 3DS games all have DLC. So I totally... And actually, Pokemon has been getting DLC sort of for a long time. Like, they have the special events where you like go to GameStop or some random place, like go to some event, and for that day you'll get whatever the free download is.
Yeah.
So I could see them continuing that in like more of what typical DLC is for the next Pokemon game, especially since aside from Mario, every big game that Nintendo's put out this past year has had DLC. So Mario,
I
wouldn't be
easily do it.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a Mario Odyssey DLC get announced soon. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I think if they were going to do it, like, probably would have announced it already. Like, because the most part, they usually announce it, like, pretty close to release date. But if suddenly they, like, had a direct next week or something, and they were like, hey, there's a Mario Odyssey DLC where we're adding an extra kingdom or two. I'd be like, great,
and
that's really cool.
Yeah,
and of course, new outfits. Yeah, it's
Luigi.
if you're going to more kingdoms, of course, there's new outfits.
Exactly.
I want to actually ride on Luigi, and or not
Luigi.
Luigi. Yoshi. Sorry.
I was like, excuse me.
Yeah, that was my one complaint with Mario Odyssey is I want to ride on Yoshi instead of possess him like some kind of evil phantom.
Yeah, you could do the death jump from Super Mario World, where like you jump over and like push.
That's the one thing I have a problem with in Super Mario World.
Push Yoshi into the never-ending void, and then you use him to like do a double jump.
No.
Oh my god.
I love Yoshi so much. Like, honestly, I just want more Yoshi.
Yeah, I do like Yoshi.
Yeah. All right. So our next question comes from the Wolfpack 23X, who says, "Didn't Ura's Zelda become Majora's Mask?" The answer is kind of.
Kinda.
So a lot of the features that were dropped from Ocarina of Time's expansion, Zelda Ura, were brought over to Majora's Mask, but then there were some that were brought over to Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, even Skyward Sword had features from the Ura expansion. So, like something simple in Twilight Princess, you could have sword combat while on horse. That was one of the first things that Miyamoto wanted to do with Ocarina of Time, but he couldn't because the Nintendo 64 didn't have the processing power. But the disk drive added extra processing power that could have possibly allowed you to have that horse combat. And then there was the Sky dungeons, which we got in Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword that Nintendo wanted to do for Ocarina of Time. We got
a lot of people think there was a Temple of Light in Ura Zelda that became Tower of the Gods in Wind Waker. It's a theory, nothing firm, but
so there are a lot of those things, but some of the stuff
could have also been Temple of Time in Twilight Princess because that's got a lot of
and some of the stuff that was cut from the Ura expansion still got left in the actual game. Like we were supposed to have a full ice temple, but that got cut down to the ice cavern.
Which, if they made a whole temple out of that, I would have been so angry.
Yeah, that was definitely
Sorry,
not a fan, huh?
No thanks. No thanks.
Honestly, the biggest problem with the ice cavern is trying to fight someone, and then you're like, you just slide.
Yeah,
like
could you imagine an entire temple like that? No, thank you.
Oh yeah, it's in it. There's one in A Link to the Past. It's the most frustrating dungeon.
I would have been so angry as a child in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I would have put the game right down. I'd be like, "Okay, peace."
So theoretically, there was the ice cavern that was supposed to be the full ice dungeon. So you still got some of it. A lot of people think that because Zora's Domain does not unfreeze in Ocarina of Time, like after you beat the Water Temple, Lake Hylia is restored. After you beat the Forest Temple, Kokiri Forest and the Lost Woods are restored. The Gorons come back to Goron City. So like every dungeon you beat fixes the place, but Zora's Domain never unfreezes. The thought is the boss that you would have potentially beat in the full ice temple dungeon would have unthawed all of Zora's domain and that area where Jabu Jabu is. But Majora's Mask ended up having
Jabu Jabu.
yeah. So
like in a corrupted state, that could have been cool.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff from Ura's Zelda was reused in later games. Majora's Mask. He asks, the time system was brought over from Zelda Ura. It was supposed to be a full week instead of just 3 days. And there was more masks that were introduced into the Majora's Mask. And yeah, there was just like a bunch of random stuff there. There was the full ice dungeon inside Majora's Mask. So there's a bunch of stuff there. But the next question, Jose Ahara, I don't know how to pronounce that, I apologize, asks or says, I think you've mentioned this on one of your videos already, but what do you think of being able to dive and swim underwater on the next Zelda game? I think this has been I think if this had been done on Breath of the Wild, the game would be even bigger. Just imagine if they had added some shrines that you could find in underwater caves. Even an underwater dungeon with a structure mainly based on caves and not necessarily a temple underwater like in Twilight Princess would be something cool to experience. In a new Zelda game, the enemies could be like the zombie or re-dead bokoblins that come out in Skyward Sword, since it'd be sort of underground. What are your thoughts on this? So I'm a big fan of swimming and like having the iron boots or whatever that lets you dive and explore underwater in Zelda games. That was one of the like the entire water temple was based off of that in Ocarina of Time. So Holly, what are your thoughts on that? Do you wish you could have like dove underneath the water in Breath of the Wild?
That'd been really nice, because I think I don't remember who said it originally in a video I was watching, but the fact that there's, you can climb every mountain, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many dark spaces and caverns and tunnels and stuff, or there should be, and you can't really kind of explore into Hyrule too much, but there kind of should be, especially since some of the shrines are very hidden in like bombable walls, and there's a few that you have to like venture pretty far down to get to, and I think it would have been cool if you were able to do that a little bit more in the game, that's for sure, and be able to swim underwater to find places like that. Yeah.
All right. What about your thoughts on that, Daniel? Because Wind Waker was also, I think, another game that wouldn't let you explore underwater. So.
Yeah, but I mean, if you could, like that, the whole game is in the ocean, so it kind of makes sense that they put that restriction.
A lot of time.
You know what's funny is the first time in the Wind Waker that I got the iron boots, the first thing I did was put them on and hop in the water, and then I got so confused that I died. I was like, oh, but I should be able to sink down.
Wait a minute.
Because I'm so used to it in previous Zelda games that you could just hop in with. I got the iron boots. I actually just skipped the description, but I should have read it.
Yeah,
and saw that it said that it would like stop heavy winds and stuff, which was in Ocarina of Time as well, that you could use it that way, but it was mostly used for like underwater stuff. So, I mean, oops. I was younger then, so I mean, oops. But I mean, I would have really liked it, especially if you had a divine beast that was underwater, like a fifth, like we talked about. I think that's how it came up before, is we're talking about the possibility of like, if way back before Champions Ballad was out, if there was another divine beast that was like a water themed one that you had to swim to, and that would be really cool. Like, if there was like an upgrade to the Zora Greaves that lets you dive or something like that, right? And there's a lot of space in Breath of the Wild that like they have it rendered, like there is space under the water, and there's like collision stuff, because if you can drop a sword underwater and it'll sink down only a certain amount, and there's stuff under the water that it will prevent you from using magnesis to pull it back up. lost a few good weapons that way by accident.
Oh no!
And when you're fighting Elizalfos on the beach, and he electrocutes you, and then your sword goes flying into the water, and you're like, no, that was a royal broadsword. It's like, no, that was a good plus durability.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, I mean, I would have really liked that as a feature. I think it was one of the things that was missing, especially because Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword both had pretty good handling for Link swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Twilight Princess more because you had the, like in Skyward Sword you could swim pretty freely, but there was no iron boots and no breathing underwater. Whereas in Twilight Princess you had the free swimming, you had the Zora armor, you got the iron boots. Like it was probably the game that handled it the best of all the ones.
Yeah,
so.
and you had the underwater bombs as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you could actually use your sword underwater.
Yeah.
So yeah, like if you put on the iron boots, you could only use the hook shot to do anything underwater in Ocarina of Time, which I felt was like kind of restricting and unnecessarily restricting.
Yeah. But maybe that was the same thing with, like, Miyamoto wanted to do horse combat, but the Nintendo 64 wouldn't let him, so maybe it wouldn't let you do that underwater. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
But like Twilight Princess did some really cool stuff that like I kind of wish that, like that. Then Skyward Sword came around, and I'm like, hey, cool! I got the double claw shots again. I can do all this Spider-Man stuff, and I was like, actually, you can do. There's less stuff that you can do with the claw shots in Skyward Sword that you could do in Twilight Princess, which is kind of weird. So I felt like, yeah, there was some mishandling there. So if they did do underwater, I'd like how to do it, how they did in Twilight Princess, basically. But they probably just do something completely new that they've never done before, to be frank, because that's how they do with Breath of the Wild anyway, so.
That's how we do.
So we have a couple of more questions, and then we can take our final question from either the chat or Discord. But before we get to those questions, Ilya Rose, which I mentioned earlier, her comment, says, "Oh my gosh, my question not only was answered, but became the title. I'm fine, I'm calm." And then she says, "Also, I agree. I can't stand when people ship them, talking about Link and Zelda, except for Skyward Sword." So I'm glad you were happy that your question was answered. But our next question comes from Scuggler Thrash, who asks, "What game developer would you like to see make a Zelda game?" Mine would be Square Enix.
Oh, I was about to say that too, Square Enix.
Yes,
yeah.
if the team behind the Final Fantasy 15 game or the Final Fantasy 7 remake, or even like the Kingdom Hearts people, like if any of them made their own Zelda game and that art style, whether it is the toony Kingdom Hearts art style or like the really detailed, almost realistic looking anime style of the newer Final Fantasy games, but for Zelda, that would be awesome.
It'd be so crazy. It'd be so crazy to see like Link and Zelda, because I mean, like Twilight is kind of, I guess, the most realistic looking.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy to see them in a light that is like the graphics of like Final Fantasy 15 something.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be like able to process it as a human being.
It would be so good.
It would be so weird, because for the most part, the whole series is more stylized and more animated and a little bit more cutesy and stuff like that. So to have like a game that's like so epically real by Square Enix would be intense.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Dan?
I'm gonna go in a different direction. There's a couple good candidates. One is, Capcom did a really good job with like Minish Cap and Oracle games and Four Swords games. So I mean, like, I actually think of all those, I like Four Swords Adventures. I really like how that game looks. Like, it's a very visually distinct game. That people don't talk about the visuals of that game very much. Yeah. It's sort of this fusion between what would be Minish Cap and A Link to the Past's elements, but like some really detailed lighting and stuff. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it actually makes use of the power of the GameCube instead of...
Yes. Yeah. But, since they've already done some Zelda games, people would know what to expect. So if we're going in a wild, different direction, I'd like to see if Retro could take it on, because they've proven like pretty diverse in how they can handle franchises. Like, you take a look at what they did with Metroid. They took a franchise that hadn't had a game in 8 years, brought it into 3D from 2D, from third to first person, and yet like made all these changes and were somehow still very true to the series with amazing attention to detail. And then they did the same thing with Donkey Kong, and I'm like, man, these guys are invincible. What could they do next, right? So maybe it's just because they've made some of my favorite games ever, and I'm just like super, like, I just, you know, I look at them and I think light shine, like the sun shines out of their arse or whatever. Like, but it's like I wonder, like, I kind of want to see them challenged with something that's a little like very prestigious almost in the gaming sphere. Like if people who get to work on games like Zelda and Mario, when they talk about it, they are like flabbergasted at the idea of working on this franchise, because it's like the holy franchise of video games. There's an interview where Grant Kirkhope, who was a composer for Rare back in the N64 days, who did some amazing soundtracks on games like he collaborated for the GoldenEye soundtrack, he made the soundtrack for Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, and he worked on the soundtrack for Mario Rabbids, which is not even a Mario game, really. It's like a Mario spin-off game.
Yeah.
And he talked about it, and he's like, I can't believe I'm making music for Mario! And he's like losing his mind. And then, so like, I feel like if you handed it over to Retro, they'd be super psyched to do it, and it'd be like this huge honor for them. And I know, like, I have faith in them that they would do it justice, or they would either do it justice or they wouldn't touch it. Yeah. You know, like they wouldn't do it anything that they don't feel would be true to the series. So, yeah, that's my answer.
All right.
Very different answer than your guys'.
Our final question from YouTube comes from Thunder Tornado Dude, who asks, my question for the next video, who would win in a battle, Link or Tingle? And he put Tingle in all caps.
Link or Tingle?
Yes.
I don't know, man. You could shoot. You get.
Where is Link in the game? How far through the game is he?
Link is always like. No, the thing is, Link is kind of pushed into the situation. Tingle, right. Okay. Tingle has pride. Like he wants to be the hero. Like that's all he lives for. But instead, he just draws maps.
The thing is, like,
well, he had those attacks in Hyrule Warriors.
How much? That's true. I was thinking, like, how much time would Link have to prepare? Like, what items would he have? But the thing about it, Link, is that he always has exactly what items he needs at all times. And if he doesn't have what he needs, he finds it very quickly, and he exploits his opponent's weaknesses.
There's a treasure chest somewhere with what he needs.
So the battle might start. If he doesn't have what he needs, there's a treasure chest close by that has exactly what he needs to beat Tingle.
Yeah, well, what if they're both? If you put it at like this, what if they're both at their most powerful? You know?
Oh God, then Link would totally. Wow.
Yeah, like, if they're both at their OP, Tingle. I don't know. I think Link.
I don't know. I think Tingle would give it his all. Yeah. Poor guy. But like I don't really picture them fighting, because I think what would really happen is they'd be like step into whatever the arena, whatever situation. Tingle would see Link and he'd start fanboying out. He'd be like, "Oh my God, I wear green too, man. I want to be a fairy." And they'd start talking, and Link would just be weird and uncomfortable, but grit his through it, just get through the conversation, and they probably wouldn't even end up fighting, and everyone in the crowd would get really disappointed and want their money back for watching. I'm just imagining this like a gladiator setup. That's how I'm picturing this whole thing down.
Yeah. All right. So I think this might be our final question, but there's a really funny one from Hyrule Gamer, who I think also might be in Holly's Discord channel as well.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So he says, thanks Game Over Jesse and King Bergerson. I was never that big of a fan of milkshakes, but when Jesse reached 50,000 subscribers, I tried one and loved it. I wanted to say thanks. Not really a question, but it's about milkshakes.
Well, because your milkshake.
Someone say milkshakes.
Yes.
Your milkshake brings everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So our final question, there's a few people that ask very similar things, but really quick, Penguin Rules 54 asked if we seen the new artwork for Link. A correction, the artwork that he listed isn't new. That was some of the first concept art they released for Breath of the Wild. So, sorry to get your hopes up, but Hyrule Gamer. I think Hyrule Gamer. Hold on, let me find who.
Which photo is this? The one where Link has like a hoodie and a motorcycle?
No, he's like he has
which
the
artwork is this?
He's like holding the bow and arrow, and it's like artistic. So, a plumber to the past asks, do you think the next Zelda game, similar to Breath of the Wild, will be 100 years ago or post Ganon? But Teplay asks, similar question, what do you expect in the next Zelda game? Now, Daniel and I have already answered this before. So, Holly, what are your hopes for whatever the next big Zelda game is? Obviously, there's going to be new remakes coming out. There's going to be whatever the handheld Zelda team is working on, the people that worked on Link Between Worlds. But what do you expect from the follow-up for Breath of the Wild? Do you think it's going to be like Majora's Mask was to Ocarina of Time, where it just takes place a little while later? We've seen the same thing with Wind Waker to Phantom Hourglass, to where it takes place after. It's just on a different console.
Right after, yeah.
Or it could be like what Twilight Princess was from Wind Waker, which Twilight Princess was literally the exact opposite. Instead of a cartoony art style with a kid, you had a realistic art style with an adult. So how do you think Breath of the Wild's going to go? Or the sequel, or whatever the next game is.
I mean, it would be cool to add on to Breath of the Wild in a whole new game. Say, like, I don't know, like 10 years, 20 years after, where everything's kind of been rebuilt.
Yeah.
You know? And so instead of, for example, right after, like, Link and Zelda are going to, you know, like the end of the game, basically. Like, all right, let's go to Zora's Domain and figure whatever's happening out. They
and then not even show us what they do at Zora's Domain.
But, like, you know, people were excited for that in the DLC. They're like, oh my goodness, they were going to pick up right there. I would prefer, if they were going to make another game off of Breath of the Wild, I would love it to be, like, 10, 20 years after that, where you kind of skip all that, because it's so very recent, and Hyrule's not going to look any different.
So we would be playing as, like, oh, I just thought of something. But in your situation, would we be playing as, like, 30-year-old Zelda and Link?
Oh, I don't know.
Or, here's my thought. What if it did take place 20, 30 years later, but you played as their kid? So, like, you played as kid, like, it is 20, 30 years in the future. Link and Zelda are still there, but you play as Prince Link.
Yeah, like,
that would be
married and fix the kingdom.
That would be pretty epic, I have to say.
So he'd be like Link the Second, but really he'd be like 22nd.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier in one of the discussions that, like, Nintendo's already stated that Link and Ocarina of Time is like the great grandfather of Link from Twilight Princess. So we know some of the Links, you know, end up getting it on with whoever they choose, whether it be Zelda,
getting it on,
Milan or Malin.
Yeah, Lon Ranch girl.
Yeah, he goes Link. He goes after the farm girls and the princesses.
Yeah.
Kind of Princess Ruto.
No, don't discriminate. You know, like no classism here.
Those fish girls.
We get a fishy Link.
Yeah, and we've seen in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is like, it confirms that there is like interspecies stuff going on.
Or could.
Or at least intention.
Yeah, intentions. Yeah.
Like with Mipha being totally in love with Link, I don't think it's ever acted upon.
Yeah.
But the intent is certainly there.
It's like she wants to.
She likes.
It's like forbidden. It's something that's like forbidden you know?
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of frowned upon.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just imagine King Deforan and he's like, yo, but he's a person.
Yeah.
He's a Hylian. We are fish people. We lay eggs. It will, like, physiologically not work.
How is it going to work? Have you thought about this? Oh my goodness. No, but I don't know. I would love them to kind of do something like that with Breath of the Wild. Have a second game, like a sequel, but it just not be right after, because I think that would kind of be boring to also be back in the same Hyrule.
Yep,
certainly.
That's just, you know, and everyone's like, why are we here? But that, or I don't know. I have no idea if they just started a whole new game. That'd be so crazy, and I don't even know what they would do. Like, I don't think I have the brain capacity to be like, oh, I could do this next. I have no idea. I am not a game developer.
I feel like if they were to do another Zelda game, like I think the next one, it's not going to be the same Link with Breath of the Wild. I don't think it's really going to be overly related to it, personally. Like, that's just like what I think will happen. But if they were to do a Breath of the Wild related game with Link again, and that Link again, what I would like to see is, I think, like, there's potential for a whole game that happened before the champions formed. Because Link, at the start of the game, at the start of even the memories, he earned the Master Sword.
Yeah, true.
And you know that you don't just pick it up somewhere, and people don't. You don't just get given the Master Sword. Like, you have to earn it through through some probably dungeon crawling things. And the thing that was missing from Breath of the Wild were the dungeons, like the really big dungeons. So I like to think that they weren't really there because Link already did them to get the Master Sword. So I think it would be really cool to see. Almost like a prequel where, you know, there's access to dungeons, and maybe the dungeons become inaccessible after you beat them, and, you know, like a rock slide happens and it covers that mountain. Yeah. And then it adds sort of some interesting context to it. The only thing is that, like you said, it would be really boring to play in the same Hyrule again.
Yeah, it would either need to be before, where all the towns, everything is very populated and intact, or well after. Yeah, I would. Yeah. That was.
Or even like, even elsewhere, you know, like even if it were outside, like outside of Hyrule, and you could see Hyrule.
They could they could do a flip. They could do like a Link Between Worlds, or, you know, like a Dark World, like parallel.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Pew! Switch it upside down. They got upside down Triforce, and Hilda's just like, oh, I'm still here, or something.
Yeah. All right. So, Holly.
Yes.
Since you are our guest, I'll let you choose and read off the final question. If you go to my Discord server, there are a few people who have tagged. I asked them to tag all of us. There was one person that tagged all of us, but just pick one of these questions, and it will be our final question.
Which thing is it in?
Social. On my Discord.
Oh, okay. Oh, I like this one. Okay. This is from Newt. And it's, where do you think Link was born and raised? Possibly in Hatsuno Village or Castle Town, or where?
Ooh.
I like that.
Breath of the Wild Link specifically. That's a good question.
Yeah. Where do you think he was born?
I have my answer. I think he was raised in Hyrule Castle. And because it's said in one of the memories that Link's father was in the Royal Guard. Right, so I think he was either raised in the castle or Castle Town.
Castle Town?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Because his father was a knight, and then he was a knight. Following that sort of course.
And from a very young age, he exhibited traits, right? And everyone kind of picked up on that. So
that means
he would have had to be in a scenario where people were like, "Oh, dang! Look at that kid's sword skills.
Why is this kid so much better than all of them?"
No, it would have began like, "Who's that kid with the Deku sticks?"
Yeah, that kid with the stick.
It's not like he's
and the pot lid.
Yeah, it's not like he's chilling in the Lost Woods or something, like banging stuff around, because no one would know he's there or find him or whatever. So he has to be very in a populated area.
So the sad part of this means his home was destroyed by the Guardians. That cutscene.
maybe that's why he's so silent, because remember when Mipha is just like, he used to be so happy and he used to smile and then he got older and then
that means
she's just like, you don't do that anymore. And then I think he like smiled at some point within one of the memories, and Mipha even like commented like, nice to see you again.
No, this means, because his dad's not in the game, he would have had to see his house like burned down. He would have had to see his dad. Yeah, his dad.
Oh no, this game is getting even more sad.
Maybe that's why he doesn't talk.
Yeah.
He would go on play dates with Mipha, you know, his parents would be like, yeah, go hang out in Zora's Domain and go see your bestie. Come back. Maybe he like came back with
royalty. She went, and they were childhood friends. So like royalty wouldn't just hang out with whatever some peasant kid from the village, right?
Yeah.
You know, this kid is the son of one of the royal guards. You know.
Yeah.
Some peasant kid.
I mean, that's what Link has been in the past.
That word always reminds me of the Disney Aladdin cartoon.
Oh yeah.
Because they call him a peasant all the time.
Riffraff.
Oh yeah.
Street rat.
Yeah, but like in Twilight Princess, Link is like a farmhand or whatnot, and he's just some village kid in Wind Waker and whatnot. So but I think
P.S. Killa in the chat says Link is not a peasant.
Uniform in the DLC. His father was in the Royal Guard, so maybe some conjecture here. But what if?
Oh, Ashley.
It was the same. His father's uniform.
Ashley in the chat, Patreon lady, says that he does build a new home in Hateno. So.
You totally cut out there for a second.
So I said Ashley, whose question we answered earlier, the Patreon lady in the chat on YouTube says he builds his new house in Hateno.
Yeah, because you got no home.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a house, man. It got raised by guardians.
He also builds the entirety of Terrytown. Or at least is the reason for it being built. He doesn't do it himself.
The reason,
But he brings them all the wood and everything else to build it.
Because of that super... He's not, like, sexist or racist, but he kind of is. He's namesist.
Yeah.
You know?
Someone
I was like,
me...
I need to only have people in my town with this in their name. I was like, wow.
Son. Their name has been in Sun. Someone asked me if I was from Tarrytown because... my Discord name is Burger Sun, and I have Sun. I was like, I hadn't even thought of that. I was like Vancouver. And then so like, but your name ends in Sun. I was like, oh wait.
Oh. Yeah, are you from Terrytown?
Someone.
I'm so smart.
PS Killa, I guess PlayStation Killa is what his name is. But in the chat he says.
Or he at the end of a letter he wrote you. PS. Killer.
Yeah. So he asked to go along with this, what if you found Link's room in Hyrule Castle and could read his diary?
That'd be so great.
Okay, that'd be really cool. I'd really like that.
Like if you could find Link's diary, that would be really
Or if you could find his diary... Or if you could find his diary in one of the destroyed houses, like in the town. That'd be even crazier, because then you'd have a solidified where he lived.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
How weird would it be as an amnesiac with no memory, or maybe 12 whole memories of your entire life, right? And then you find your own diary, like,
and all of a sudden it's
crazy.
like the most crazy flashback ever.
You're like, oh, everything. Yeah, like if seeing those locations triggers like a memory of like that moment, then finding your home where you grew up and like reading your diary, like what kind of memories would that trigger? That'd be a hella cutscene to see.
That'd be some like Attack on Titan. Have you guys seen Attack on Titan?
I have not.
No, don't hate me.
Well, in the first, that would be some Attack on Titan stuff, because you basically, not to spoil it, but you see a lot of people die.
We have the
first scene.
We have the fake gamer nerd girl explaining anime to us.
Yeah, sorry guys. You have in the first scene, you see your whole family just gone. Could you imagine if like you, as a cutscene, you find your diary and then you find your like desolated house, and then it's just like, oh, cutscene, and it's just like whole family dead. Oh, so sad. I would love it. I'd be so about that.
Yeah, the final thing about this, before we go, Newt, who asked the original question, says, what if Link's mother from the Hateno village and Link's father was from Castletown? Like the house that Link buys could formerly be his mother's because he wants to buy it, and it is old.
True. Yeah, because no one lives there anymore, so that person is deceased.
Yeah.
True.
It's haunted.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's what's funny is Ashley, the aforementioned Patreon lady, which she mentions in the chat that the quest log in the Japanese version of Breath of the Wild is written from Link's perspective.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's almost like a journal, as opposed to in our release of the game that we got, where it's sort of written in like you need to go do this. You talk to this person, and they said this, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting, actually, that there is that. Yeah. I kind of wish that we'd gotten that, because it's sort of another bit of immersion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been like I went here or I did this instead of you need to do this. All right, so I guess that brings us to the very end of our podcast. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. Thank you, Holly. Wait, what about thank you, Daniel? Yeah, you're always here.
Yeah, I don't know. Thank you, Jesse.
Go away, Daniel.
I was gone one time, Jesse. One time.
Go away, Daniel. No, Holly.
Okay, yeah.
All right. No, Holly. So there was one guest that we occasionally have on here named Ashley, a different not Ashley, sorry, Alexis. Like we make like her name's Lexi. She goes by Lexi. But there was a bunch of people in the comments on one of the videos because she came on saying that her name's not Alexa because she doesn't like being called Alexa.
I see.
So everyone in the comments started calling her Alexa. But yeah. So anyways, she's been on a couple of videos, and then there's obviously Daniel's been on a lot of videos. Someone commented on one of the videos. It was like, I want to see Daniel and Lexi. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll
just see them.
Yeah, I was like, I guess I'll just leave.
Lexi.
Yeah, I was like, I guess I'll just leave. Yeah. Nobody wants me.
No. Remember, I would stream Zelda on your channel, like when I was streaming both on my yours, and people would like go onto yours and be like,
"Where's Jesse?
Where's Jesse?"
I think the same thing when 5J would stream too on this channel. And ooh, yeah. Although I think that comment happened like the one podcast that I was unable to make it. And then they commented saying, "Give us Daniel and Lexi," and I was like, "Oh, they miss me." That's so nice.
Yeah. So Holly, thank you for joining on this very long podcast. We've been going for about 3 hours, which is about an hour longer than usual.
Yeah.
So hopefully we didn't take up too much of your time. And
that's cool.
Gibbs in the chat says, Jesse Senpai didn't notice me tonight. We did notice you, but we had a very long discussion between all of the questions, so didn't have time to get to it. So for everyone that's watching right now, if they wanted to find more from you, where could they go? And why should we care about you?
Oh no, well I don't know why you should care about me, but besides I'm a cool kid. Holly T. Wolf is all my social media is Holly Wolf TV here on YouTube. But yeah, if you guys, I don't know, I model and cosplay and do some gaming videos here and there. I'm partnered on Twitch, so technically I can't actually game anymore on YouTube. It's one of the rules set. So yeah.
Oh. Yeah,
no, if you're partnered on Twitch, you cannot game on competing platforms. So I could live stream on YouTube, but I cannot play video games on YouTube anymore. So sorry about that. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's in your agreement you sign. But yeah, so I cosplay, like lots of Zelda cosplays, lots of other cosplays, a lot of Nintendo. I am a Nintendo like fangirl. So yeah, lots of that stuff. If you want to follow me, I got an Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Patreon.
Adventurer Mike in the chat says, "Ooh, cosplay."
Ooh, cosplay. Yes, I do the cosplays. Yep.
With the most detailed Guardian armor I have ever seen.
Guys, there's butts. Sorry, there's butts.
And it's real butts.
Yeah, so
not like Daniel's.
Not like Daniel's.
Not like my fake butt.
Fake booty exposed.
My fake butt is actually 2 couch cushions in my pants.
Ooh, yeah. there somewhere.
Square cushions though, so it's really obvious.
Oh no. Yeah, but yeah, no. Warning. My stuff is a little bit more on the adult side of things.
Newt says, I enter her channel and see almost her butt.
Bare butt, yeah. So just be aware. Okay, I am not
maybe
safe
if you're
for children.
like a youngin.
It is not a PG channel.
Yeah, if you are 12, please.
Ashley says nice butt.
Nice butt. See, so yeah, be
it's
fine.
real.
Yeah. All right, 17, almost adult. Okay, you pass. It's fine. But yeah, any younger than that, I feel uncomfortable. Okay, I feel triggered. So be careful.
So Twitter, and Twitch, Holly T Wolf, right?
Yes.
And then
Twitter,
YouTube,
Twitch, Hollywolf TV. Yeah. All
right, Hollywolf TV on YouTube, Holly T Wolf on Twitter, and everything else. There will be links in the actual video, and every time that I have a guest come on my videos, you can find their Twitter handle in the corner of their video. So always give credit there for people that come on the channel. So once again, thank you, Holly, for coming on to probably the 10th video, I guess. I don't even know that you've been on from my channel.
Yeah, probably something like that, yeah.
And as always, thank you, Danielle, for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for watching, the people that tuned in live. At one point, we had 50 people watching us talk about a book, so...
It's an eventful day.
Yes. Yay!
Woo!
All right.
I just added Holly on Snapchat just now.
Oh, good times.
All right.
Yes.
So, say bye, everybody. We're ending the live stream.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.